Hey, business storytellers, how's everyone doing? Thanks for joining me. Another live stream here. We are live on Amazon, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. Looks like everything is working. That's always half the battle to the point we are now in the show. But a lot of things were not working a little bit ago. So we actually had to switch over to do a different platform using Restream. Of course, use my link to sign up for Restream. That's will be in the show notes at the bottom there. I'll update that in a little bit when I'm done talking. But today we're doing something different. And you guys know me. I like to do different things, trying what works, see what doesn't work, throwing our content to parade. So I don't know, a few months ago, I ran across Colin Jeffries and Eric Reed, and they have the Rethinking Marketing podcast. You should definitely take a listen to that. I'm pretty sure I put a link in the notes. If I didn't, just Google them. Easy breezy to find, especially the Google podcast version. But what we're going to do is this is actually their podcast today. And I'm thinking back, remember back in the 90s, or I don't know, maybe more recently too, when like one sitcom had another sitcom, like the stars came on and, then they finished the episode on the other episode. That's kind of what I thought about when we came up with this idea. Why not? Why not do it? Who says there's a rule? Who has the rules on live streaming? Not me, even though my latest book is out, Going Live Stream Your Podcast to Reach More People. So check that out. If you're watching on Amazon, that is the featured item as well. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to turn over to those guys. I'm going to turn into the guest, even though you guys know me, obviously. And they'll do their little spiel. They'll do their little podcast. And I'll be back before you know it. I'm going to head in the green room, have some iced coffee, and we're going to move forward with the recording and live streaming of their episode. All right. Here you
Hey, hello. Thanks, Christoph, for kind of setting that up. And we're excited about doing this too. So let's start it like we do any podcast here, Colin. I'd say thanks for joining us today, everyone, on the Rethink Marketing podcast. I'm Eric Reed, joined by Mr. Marketing. And for today, a luminary of live lexicon, Mr. Colin Jeffries. How are you doing, Colin?
A luminary. I'm going to have to add that to my LinkedIn description, Eric. I like that.
I think you should. I'll be looking there later today, and I expect to see that.
Perfect.
I thought you'd like that. Hey, this is honestly, this is really cool today because, we've talked to Christoph in the past. He's an amazing content marketer. I think the episode was called, having a carnival with your content, etc. But this is really cool today. Going live. It's something actually we're looking at, and we talked to other podcasters about it, and one may want to look at some small to medium-sized businesses that might be looking at podcasting, maybe what they can take away from that. But why to you is this something to kind of rethink and kind of talk about today?
Well, Eric, I think the reason it needs to be rethought is because the pendulum of media consumption was very focused on going live. We talk about Happy Days in the 60s and 70s, whenever that aired, and it was attracting an audience weekly of 60 million people that were tuning in live to watch it.
Happy Days.
And Happy Days is a good reference. The Fonz, Richie, everybody. But today, Big Bang Theory, which is one of the most popular shows, only attracts an audience of 6 million a week. So I think a lot of marketers look at that and they think, all right, the idea of folks tuning into primetime media is sort of old hat. It's in the past. What we need to do now is pre-recorded. We have to keep up with Netflix and Tubi TV and Amazon Prime and all of these mediums that allow folks to stream content on their schedules. But what we're missing out on is the opportunity to engage with folks in real time. And that's one of the beauties of live streaming, is that you're able to interact with your audience and they can ask questions and you can respond to them. And it allows you to get in front of different people at different times. So I think the pendulum has really swung each way, and we're in an opportunity now where we can really do both. You can create live content, and then you can basically have two methods of distribution. One is obviously live, and the other is then using it later and pre-recorded. So we have one of the best in the business joining us today, and we won't get too deep into his introduction, but Christoph Trapp is a global top 14 content marketer, top 40 B2B marketer, top 24 digital marketer, and recipient of the IMA Internet Marketer of the Year Award. I think it's sufficient to say that Christoph is a content machine. He does
Yes, it
launch
is.
a new book in March, and he's going to show us all the power of going live, which is the title of the book and the title of his podcast. Welcome to the Rethink Marketing podcast, Christoph Trapp. Great to have you with us today and excited to collaborate.
Yes. Welcome,
Thanks.
Christoph.
Thanks for having me back on, guys. Always glad to catch up with you.
Great. Hey, Colin, I don't know if you want to kick it off with the traditional, we usually call it a softball question. I've used that before, and when somebody came right back at me and said, I thought you said that was going to be a softball question. But I think I think this one really is, because I think, Colin, when you and I were talking, what would be great to kind of get this going is just to understand, you've got the Going Live podcast, Christoph. You've got the Going Live book that's coming out this week, or it's, I know, or correct me if I'm wrong. I think you can get it on Kindle and so forth, but the real release is now. It works together with your podcast, and so what set you down this path of going live? Where's the passion coming from? What is the connection of the book and the podcast? Just what's it all about?
Yeah, first of all, I got to say, guys, good job going live. See how easy it is? You just go live and talk. It's no different. We don't have to overthink it. And that's really the first step. I know sometimes people get kind of, what do we do, and how do we do it? Do we overthink things or whatever? But basically, what I realized, I'm always trying to find a way to stay in front of audiences. And as you guys know, that's harder and harder to do, quite frankly. And so now everybody's starting a podcast. B2B companies are starting podcasts, and B2B, don't get me started, how hard it is to get an audience anyways. You have the whole mix of horrible content, overly stiff content, to an audience that is really picky, and there's buying committees. So it can be a challenge to build any kind of audience for your content. And so basically what I realized is, if you're going to start a podcast and you have 20 downloads, don't go down that road. Just live stream your podcast. And then the other thing is, you also want to schedule it. So for example, I know we didn't do it today, but just because of timing to an extent, but a lot of times I schedule my posts, my live streams, and just the scheduled post alone has, a few hundred views. So I'm reaching more and more people just by truly maximizing every channel that I can think of. What's next? Here's what I'm thinking. We will have VR podcasts. I don't know why anybody needs to see VR of my little basement office. So I may have to buy more stuff to make it look more interesting. But I'm telling you, you can already do VR with like a $70 camera on your phone. So it's just a matter of time before somebody figures out how to make that actually useful. So, that's where I'm coming from. How do we stay useful? How do we stay relevant? How do we stay in front of people?
Christoph, you obviously didn't cut your teeth going live. It's something that has evolved, and you've definitely taken opportunities to take advantage of that. But what would you say to somebody who maybe is starting to get comfortable in a pre-recorded sense? Maybe they have a podcast, maybe they have a vlog or something of that nature that they're doing, a YouTube channel, etc. How do they know that they're in a good spot to start going live?
Well, when is a good day? When am I in a good spot to lose weight, right? I mean, always and never, if you think about it. So it's the same thing. Are you always going to be 100% ready? No. I'll give you an example. Eric and I joined, first, and nothing worked. Were we ready to go today? No. Like, there's always something, right, that happens. So what you really want to think about is, if you're already putting in all this time and effort to do a podcast, why not live stream it? Now, I know some people out there, and I think I made this comment on the last show I was on with you guys, some people love to edit out every little bitty mistake anybody makes, which I don't think that's necessary. Like, every once in a while, like if it's an easy edit, like, I was editing something the other day and the guest said something, and then the host said like, so, and like, I took that out just because it was right there, and like, it was a relatively easy edit, but don't overthink it. And the other thing you have to think about is, what's the return on all those edits? Like, are you telling me you're getting more listeners because you edited out more ums and ahs than I did? Guys, I don't know how Amazon Live looks like we're having people tune in. I can't estimate yet how many it will be at the end. Sure. But I had 27,000 viewers on an Amazon Live the other day. and we totally went off on the tangents, like the guest is like, oh, hold on, look at this. Like we didn't even know about what she was going to show me.
Right.
And it was totally interesting. So really quickly, hey, Chris Stone is joining us here on Amazon. Chris, appreciate you tuning in. Chris is actually, I'm going to be on his show this afternoon, Dealcasters. So please
fantastic.
That's a great show, by the way. Christoph, what's funny about that is we talk about, you did talk about that editing and you didn't say it this way, but the strive to perfection and worrying about how you sound and what you do. Could you imagine in real life if somebody was following you around and editing everything you said? I mean, every conversation we have, there's those pauses and thinking what's going on. And so I think we can get obsessed with that. But to follow up on Colin's question just a little bit, if a small to medium-sized business is saying, man, we've got to do a podcast, I'm hearing this from my peers, my friends, etc. It's something we want to do. It's how we can get a message out. Do you go live right out of the gate? Do you build an audience first? Do you play it by ear? Does it depend on your business? Or, what would you say? Go live day one, do it? Or...
Yeah, it's a good question. So I did not go live the first day when I did podcasts. So what I did is, here's kind of my progression from podcasting. And I did live streams way back when Periscope first came out and Meerkat, but I didn't think about it as a podcast at the time. It was just me sitting at the airport going, oh, let's go live. Let's talk about whatever, And I mean, that's kind of how I did it. And then a couple of years ago, I started a podcast and I didn't consider anything about live. I was just trying to figure out how to do a podcast. I tried to figure out how to distribute it. Now, distribution has gotten a lot easier, quite frankly, from let's say 10 years ago or 8 years ago, but you have to start somewhere. So if you want to start some podcasts before going live, why not? Sometimes companies already have a ton of content that they could use for podcast episodes, even though it's not the same format. So consider doing that. But then all of a sudden, so here's how I actually realized it. I was on Jason Fall's show. It wasn't called Digging Deeper back then. And Jason goes, we're live, and here's how I do it. And he lifted up his iPad, and he showed how to do it. And I'm like, what? Like, I got to do that. So let's try it. And I didn't realize the impact it would have. And then the other thing, I don't know if Chris is still here, but Chris and Jim Fuchs, they certainly gave me the idea with Amazon Live. I didn't even know about Amazon Live until before Thanksgiving. Right. So my point is, you have to keep evolving. You have to keep finding new things. And if you're already doing a podcast, it's such an it's easier said than done, but it's not as hard as people think it is. I'll give you an example. I'm doing the AdMark conference in April, and they sent me a 3-sentence thing to record. I recorded it 5 times. And I'm like, this is the craziest thing ever. I'm on camera all day long. I had a live show this morning I was producing. Now I'm on yours, or you're on mine, or whatever.
However we look at it, right?
And now I'm going on Dealcasters. So I'm doing basically 3 hours of live shows today, 2 as a host or a guest, and then 1 as a producer. It took me 5 tries to record a 3-sentence thing. That's crazy.
It's always different when it's scripted because you hear it differently up here than when you actually speak it. So I'm not surprised. It's just funny.
It is.
And that goes back to Eric's point about pursuing perfection. I think, Christoph, if I'm not overly reading into what you said, you can get competent with one medium or in one area and then expand out into other areas. You don't necessarily have to master one area, build a giant audience in that area before you consider expanding into another area. Is that appropriate to say?
I think that's true. And the other thing to keep in mind too is you don't actually have a big audience on podcast channels, because all these companies that are doing podcasts, they're just launching, and they've spent years, sometimes against my advice, building a Facebook audience or a LinkedIn audience or whatever. And now they should maximize that channel, and they should at least try to live stream there. And currently, a lot of the networks, they are prioritizing live streams because, first of all, not that many people are doing them. Second of all, it is unique content. And third of all, if it's halfway interesting, it keeps people on the platform, which is literally what everybody wants.
Right.
Well, and you can use Restream and StreamYard and some of these other services to your point, there's no incremental work per se. You're just saying, hey, instead of live streaming via Facebook, I'm going to live stream via StreamYard or Restream or what have you. And I'm going to hit 4 or 5 different mediums instead of just a single one for the same amount of effort.
I mean, that's, I think, the way to do it, honestly, and that's kind of what I like about that whole model, that now you can live stream with just one platform to a bunch of different channels. And, it was interesting when I actually did some webinars to multiple channels. And this is so long ago, which is not that long ago, like 4 years ago, maybe. And we put basically, if we had 4 channels, we had 4 phones in front of us, each phone streaming to the own channel, which is, of course, wouldn't work, right? Because we're not near each other. Chris Stone here on Amazon says, I love how you shoot your shots, Christoph. You're not afraid to dive in and get it done, not worried about perfectionism. Start ugly, baby. Now, I don't start ugly, but this is as pretty as I'm going to get no matter what, right? I mean, I don't have any hair to begin with. I could lose some weight. But so don't go for, I know Chris is kidding, but don't go for ugly. But don't overthink it. And here's the other thing. Like, I don't like my voice. I don't like speaking. I don't like anything. I don't, this shot, I finally got an angle of myself I halfway like, but it wasn't always like that. Just kind of start. So I guess that means I did start as the ugly baby, but, just kind of roll with it.
Well, there are things to consider in all seriousness. I mean, you are putting out a product. I mean, very honestly, I look like I might be sitting in an interrogation room. I'm doing this live experience with you, realizing I need to kill that canned light above my head next time. But you do get into wanting it to look professional, etc. You want it to look right, but you want to have a good message. And I think sometimes we get caught up in how we're saying it more important than what we're saying or what we're communicating. And so, for me, the live stream, and for those who don't know, I've been talking about it earlier, this is the first time that Colin and I mean, we've been on other live streams, interviewed and so forth. This is the first time we've taken our podcast to be kind of live like this. And it doesn't mean that the podcast doesn't exist. I mean, we were just talking about repurposing it. You're going to do this exact thing. We do it with guests all the time. We have great conversations. We talk about marketing tactics, what to rethink, etc. This is the same thing. It just happens to be going live. And then after the fact, we take it and we create our podcast and push it out. So to me, for the same effort and dollars and however you're measuring return, you're just getting more mileage by going live. Is that a fair way to look at it? I mean, it seems to me like you're capturing you're getting twice the value for the one recording, in my opinion.
I mean, that's exactly the reason why I kind of came up with the whole concept and wrote a book about it. And also, I'm doing it. And in fact, it's, I think more and more people are realizing the value, because sometimes I have guests on. So for example, here's what happened. Eric came on, I came on, something didn't work and I couldn't figure it. I tried how many times, Eric? Like 12 times?
Yeah. It was a handful. You're being hard on yourself, because with echoes, if you're in the music industry, you might be trying to achieve that. But to your point, we couldn't figure it out.
So we moved to another platform. And then now we got to figure it out. So we lost a few functionalities. But if this wouldn't have worked, you know what we would have done? We would have just said, hey, you want to just do an audio version, which of course, but a lot of guests now, when that happens, and it doesn't happen as often as you might think, they say, oh, no, let's just reschedule, because people are starting to see the value of being live, So we have all these different channels. And then some people will argue, oh, but then you're like, is the podcast, are they the second fiddle? No, that's old school thinking. I'm a newspaper reporter by trade. I'm the first to say everything has to go in print first, but nobody works like that anymore. There's people who watch it on the live streams. My Amazon audience is very different from the people listening to my podcast. They have similar interests, but they're not the same people for the most part, So it's not about who gets it first. It's who gets it when they want it and on whatever channel they want it.
Exactly. And I think one of the things we haven't really teased out, though, is that audience engagement. Christoph, you've had a couple of people comment while we've been live, and it's cool to be able to say, hey, we're interacting with them right now in real time. They might be making comments or asking questions that the podcast audience who listens to the recorded version later gets a lot of value out of. And it allows you then to build relationships with those folks who are engaging with your content. So it seems kind of like a win-win.
Christoph, let me just ask this question, because Colin, you got me thinking about something here. There's different types of podcasts. There's, murder mystery. There's, a day in the life. There's all kinds of different storytelling podcasts. And then there's this whole growing area of business and content podcasts, which is where my head's at right now, from a company that's trying to get in the space of having a conversation with their audience, and they're deciding that podcasting is the way they want to go. They want to use it as a piece to push out after the fact, to send to clients about, here's a conversation about something that ties exactly to the pain point you're having and why our product might be able to help that. So again, I think I know the answer to this, but in your opinion, does it matter what kind of podcast you're doing? Is Go Live just the solution or a great thing to do for building audience and getting more people to engage? Are there any type of podcast that maybe wouldn't be ones that you would recommend to go live? Is that a fair question?
Well, I mean, everything is a fair question. I'm not a big fan of absolutes, honestly. So, when we say everyone, I mean, there's always an exception, but don't use it as an excuse. Oh, we can't do it. We can't do it. We can't do it for whatever. Like, we can't do it because of our schedules. We can't do it because we don't have a fancy mic. We can't do it because we're in 4 different time zones.
Right.
Whatever. Like, they're all excuses.
But you'll hear it a lot, right? I mean, you probably run into that. People saying, "I wouldn't have the time. Who's got production time, etc."
I mean, you hear it all the time, but they're just excuses. Like, why am I not losing weight? Because I like to eat, and I don't work out enough. And so it's like, it's an excuse, yes, I got to lose some weight. So, so I don't want to say everyone, but I think most companies that try to do a podcast can do it. Now, a murder mystery, maybe not. I don't know, but I'm doing my book podcast. It's live, like everything else. I can't write a book about going live and then not having the live version of the book reading. That's true. Kind of weird. But so just try it. And I think don't look for excuses. Look for reasons to do it. And that's usually, I think, the hang up. And then the other thing is, you don't need a live streaming strategy, period. You don't need a podcasting strategy, period. You don't need a social media strategy, period. You need a marketing strategy that fits into your business goals, and then that all goes together. So I don't have a live streaming strategy. I have a content strategy. And sometimes, if I really want to be fancy about it, I say my video content strategy. But at the end of the day, it all fits together. And if it doesn't fit together, then you don't have enough people to begin with to do that. So you want to make sure it all fits together and you maximize everything you're doing.
Christoph, let's peel that back a little bit. Can you, and you don't have to define explicitly what your particular marketing strategy is, but can you define sort of where those different elements fit into the gear of your marketing strategy, if you will? The cog of live streaming fits in here, the cog of, say, blogging fits in over here, and so on and so forth?
Yeah, of course. So basically, when it comes to content marketing, right, and all this organic content, there's really 2 reasons why you want to do it. Number one, you want to first of all, you want to increase your brand awareness, right? You want to make sure people know about you. And the way you do that, quite frankly, is you share your own knowledge and you invite other people on the show that, also can add to the discussion. Now, then they can also share the content. And also, sometimes if you invite prospects on the show, that's another strategy. I think James Carberry may have been the first one who publicly talked about that. That's another strategy. You get prospects on the show. The problem with prospects is you might not care if you have a crappy episode and they sign a deal for 6 figures or something. But at the end of the day, your podcast will be hurting at some point if you only have horrible guests. And it's a sales call for them, basically. Right. But again, if you make $1 million, maybe you don't care, and you're going to shut it down anyways. So, but take your live stream and make it really. I think you make it the centerpiece. Back 6 years ago, we would interview experts, and then we write the content up. What I'm saying is, invite the experts, whether they're internal or not. I don't really care. On your show, interview them on your show. And then use that content on your podcast, use that content on your blogs, your blog articles, use that content on your website, use it everywhere, throw it a parade. And so it's really becoming the centerpiece. So what used to be very private 6 years ago, I'm now making public
Yeah.
because I'm already using it publicly, right? So they can't tell me things that should be off the record because we're already live. But basically, I think of it in your content marketing strategy, make it the centerpiece, and it's super helpful.
So I appreciate you breaking that down and saying making it the centerpiece. What would you say is the one biggest learning that you've had since you started going live?
I think the biggest thing is you got to relax, like technology. And so I remember back in the day when I didn't know this and something didn't work and we tried something new and it didn't work. It wasn't even my fault. It was technology. And I felt bad about it. Like, why is that my fault? Because I recommended it? Whatever. You know what I mean? But I felt really bad about it. And now something doesn't work. I just don't let it faze me. Like we did, so I produced the Real Talk Customer Insights show with Vox Pop Me. And 3 episodes ago, nothing worked. So we literally just end up recording it and just did the audio version. We didn't do anything else. So that's I think the biggest thing. Really take it easy, relax, and go from there. Make the best out of it.
That's good advice. And Colin, when we had Christoph on before, we did talk about I think you were talking about just getting into Pandora at the time. And I think this was something that you were just starting to talk about. And so I got to commend you for some moving forward and that type of stuff. I mean, you kind of had an idea, you moved on it, which I think is great advice for anybody to glean away from this. And I'm also hearing and knowing from what I've heard on your podcast that if you're just trying to put information out there because you want to have a presence and you want to be a personality, I mean, you can't go live if you're not if your goal isn't to provide real meaningful content that people can enjoy the conversation, what you're talking about, and maybe pull some learnings from it. Then no matter what you do, live, not live, it's going to be a waste of time. So you still have to put it through the same filters of, is this quality? Is it meaningful? Why would somebody want to listen to it?
Yeah, and so just to give you, yes, agreed. But I'll give you an example. So I'm a big Amazon Live fan now. And I actually, I live stream my vacuum cleaner, cleaning the house. And I live stream, yeah. You saw that, right? And I live stream me working. And sometimes, I think actually, Eric, you were the victim of this a couple of times. You email and says, can I call you in a minute? And I said, I can't. And my phone is currently live streaming my vacuum cleaner. Right. So, what's interesting to me, and so yesterday when I live streamed myself working, and I didn't even talk, I didn't say anything. A couple times when somebody asked me something, hey, can you say something in the mic? There was like 8,000 people watching.
Yeah.
So my point is,
what kind of work are you doing, Christoph, where 8,000 people are interested in watching you type?
It's not much different from what I'm doing. They can't even see what's on the screen. I could be doing anything. It's from over there. And they can see my desk, they can see my setup. So sometimes they ask questions about the light, the camera, the mic, but I don't do anything. So my point is, the line to being useful might not be as high as you think it is. Because if you know what I'm saying, like just something to keep in mind. Just be real, share what's worth sharing, find different areas of content to share. And kind of go from there. Have fun, be relevant, and get your stuff in front of people. Get out there.
Well, first of all,
and Christoph,
let me just say this real quick. I've been rejected and passed over for a lot of things, but the being passed over for the vacuum cleaner was probably the lowest point of my rejection life. So I want to thank you for that, Chris. Go ahead, Colin.
Christoph, would you say that it's okay if somebody can only go live for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, or do they need to block out a minimum amount of time?
Well, so for these talks, I know we're going to be wrapping it up here in a moment, but for these talk shows, I think you want to be somewhere between 30, I don't know how long we've gone, about 30 minutes, 30 to, 50 minutes maybe. For some of these other shows, and Eric, again, my deepest apologies. That thing, I couldn't even find it. I don't know where it was, somewhere in the house.
I got over it.
So, we hope we can still be friends.
Are you a Dyson man, a Shark man? I mean, what type of
That's the
vacuum are we
question,
talking
right?
here?
Right.
So this is a Dream Tech. It's a
It
robotic
looked pretty-
vacuum
it
cleaner,
looked
right? So
fancy.
it just drives around the house. And I don't know what I was gonna say, but anyway, for those, like I stream for like hours. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like once I'm streaming, like it's going along. So don't go too short. LinkedIn actually tells us that they don't want people to go live for less than 15 minutes. I don't think they're going to ban you if you do every once in a while, but they say that because people tune in. I mean, when you look at the Amazon numbers as they're coming in, Amazon is the easiest to measure while we're live. Like it's going up and down, up like there's 11, there's 25, there's, you know what I mean? It goes up and down because people are leaving, people coming back, people see us. So you want to give them a chance to tune in.
Well, Christoph, I mean, great conversation. And, typically there's two things I'd want to do before we sign off here. The first is I want to make sure, because, we're talking to a lot of people familiar with you right now, but when our podcast goes out, a lot of our audience will want to know how they can connect with you, where they can grab your book, how they can just kind of hear all the things that you're doing. So can you just share that, some contact information with us on how to contact you and what's going on for you?
Of course, authenticstorytelling.net, of course, is probably the easiest. The book is also on Amazon. Just search for Going Live Trap, TRAPPE. Currently, it's at number 2 in the new releases for public relations. The book in number 1 is the book on the Blockbuster problems, that they've had over the years. So I don't think I'm going to catch them, but check them out. Check out the book, connect with me. Feel free to connect on LinkedIn. Let me know you heard me on the show. Always appreciate knowing where people came from.
Great.
And Christoph, if folks want to see where you're live, it's safe to say you're on every platform known to man, correct?
Well, so currently I focus on Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Amazon. I did Twitch previously. There's really not that many people watching. It's more of a gaming platform.
Mm-hmm.
And I really kind of neglect Facebook right this second. But those other ones, that's kind of where I currently focus. But like with a tool like Restream, you can go to 30 channels at once. So, if you can figure out how to use them all, some of them are gaming channels. So I don't think that would be relevant necessarily. But you can do up to 30.
Well, Christoph, we are the Rethink Marketing podcast. And so I know you're familiar with this from being on before, but we certainly like to hear, and we like our audience, and I'm sure people want to hear what some significant influencers in this space are rethinking. So can you share with us maybe one thing professionally or even personally that you're currently rethinking in your life?
Well, I mean, a pretty obvious answer, right? I mean, how do I get more out of my podcast? And I think he said to me, he goes, well, thanks for giving me credit, but you still have to do all the work. And totally true. But Jason Falls kind of got me down this path, quite frankly. And he didn't mean to, right? So the last time, maybe I didn't mention on this show, but I still credit Joe Polizzi for writing one of my first books, because he kept saying, and I know he was just on your show, you got to write a book. And I did, in large part because of his advice. I still had to do all the work myself. But Jason Falls, same thing with the live streaming. He kind of showed off how he was doing it. And then, and then we basically, I took it from there. And, here we are today, and I do it all the time now. So definitely, sometimes people don't know that they influence you just by one little thing that they do in passing almost.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I Christoph, thanks for the time. Thanks for letting Colin and I be a part of the Go Live. I will tell you that you have inspired us. You have before, but even more so today. This has been pretty easy, and we're in the process of looking how to go live with the Rethink Marketing podcast. So I want to thank you for your insights, for just sharing, what's going on in your head around content and podcasting. And, we look forward to conversations in the future.
Awesome. Yep. I'm looking forward to you guys going live. Don't get rattled by any of the problems. They will happen. And just have a good conversation, and, make sure it's recording so you can use it on your podcast channels.
Right.
That's really the main thing.
A great guest just told me to relax when going live. That was one of his big takeaways. So I'll try to implement that as we continue to go live more, Christoph.
It's the biggest advice, honestly. Just
awesome.
Chill. Yep.
Much
Awesome.
easier said than done, I'm sure.
I know it is. All right, great. Thanks, guys, for having me on your show.
All right.
And thanks, everyone, for watching and listening on the Business Storytelling Podcast. Until next time.